Okay, welcome everyone. This is Washington State Building Code Council full council meeting for Friday, June 26, 2026. Can we please take roll?
Yes, Todd Baird there.
Here.
Jay Arnold.
Here.
Scott Bastiani. Jason Benway. See Jason online.
Jason, I see you, but you're not unmuted.
You're echoing, Dustin. Somebody's volume's on.
We're working on that right now.
Okay. Jason? Okay, I'll come back. Tom Handy.
Here.
Angela Hopt.
Here.
Roger Haringa.
Here.
Ty Menzer.
Here.
Ben O'Mara.
Here.
Vikram Sami. Katie Sheehan.
Here.
Morgan Tweed.
Here.
Tom Young.
Here.
Dan Young.
Here.
We'll go back. Scott Bastiani.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Jason Benway. Vikram Sami. But we do have a quorum now. Let me go to our ex officio members. Lauren Lathrop. Representative Alex Rammel.
Good morning.
Oh, I got you, Alex. Thank you. Representative Suzanne Schmidt.
Here.
Senator Sharon Shoemake. Senator Shelley Short. And our Assistant Attorney General Derek Meyer-Bachdahl.
Thanks, Annette. Hi, all. I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, we're good.
All right, thank you, Nat. We'll take an opportunity here to allow introductions from the public. Does anyone like to be recognized? Does anyone? Sorry, I'm looking for hands here. I see Greg.
I'm unmuted. Okay, Greg Johnson with Vista.
Welcome. Patrick.
Patrick.
Okay. We see him trying. When you click in, Patrick, go ahead. But go ahead, Tim.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
Okay. Looks like Patrick Hanks from BIW is having trouble unmuting. So go ahead, Matthew.
Matthew Friedlander with Renew Air.
Welcome. Lisa.
Lisa Rosno, Evergreen Technology Consulting. We provide tech support for the commercial provisions of the Washington State Energy Code.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Let's try Patrick again.
Yes, Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington with a working mic.
Perfect. Okay, I think that's it. Let's Dustin, did you want to be recognized? I saw your hand.
I was just wanting to run a sound check for us in the room. It sounds like we got it good.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. With that, let's go on to agenda item 2 to review and approve the agenda. Can we have a motion to approve, please?
Motion to approve the agenda. This is Dan.
This is Roger. I'll second, but there's also a hand up, Todd.
I see that now. Jason, go ahead.
I just want to let you guys know I'm here. I couldn't get unmuted.
All right, welcome. Okay, it's been moved to approve the agenda. Any proposed edits? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Item 3, review and approve the minutes for May 29th. As we bring those up on the screen, can we hear a motion to approve, please?
This is Roger. I'll motion to approve as presented.
Thank you.
Tom, second.
Tom Handy, thank you. Any proposed edits? Comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? The minutes are approved. Item 4, as a full council meeting, we welcome public comment on items not on the agenda. I see a hand from Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, question for Dustin. This week on Tuesday, I got a few updated holes filled from Pacific Northwest Laboratories on the commercial code. I had emailed that in to you guys. I see that it didn't make it to the posted documents. Is that wondering what's the best way to handle it, because we're still filling the final little holes that we had the gaps for the credit values where there's blanks.
I would say the best way to handle that is to submit what you have there as public comment. We have them, we can bring them in right now, but that would be the plan right now. So to integrate those at the late stage, we're still working on stuff to get posted for today's meeting. And so the last minute information we'll probably take as public comment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we will move straight into agenda item 5, committee reports, starting with the executive committee. Dustin, I believe we're gonna. Do you want to start? And I think we're going to cover the schedule in this item, right?
Yeah. So at the executive committee, we met to discuss how we're going to approach a response to public comments for the codes filed in June, and filed in May, and we had the hearings in June. And so we set a work session schedule for Tuesdays in the afternoons, beginning on July 7th, running throughout the end of August. And those are all been placeholdered on the SBCC website. And we're still putting together our comments documents for that meeting. And as soon as we can start getting that ready, we'll be putting out a schedule of when we expect, or the topics expected to be on those work sessions are. And that's all we really discussed at the executive committee meeting is that the update for those meetings. And then as we got into the BFRW committee meeting, we had 2 items on that agenda. The first one was to further consider the petition that's on the agenda for today for the council. So we had that go to the BFRW in May, and then we also heard it as an introduction at the council meeting in May, and then we brought it back on the 17th to a special BFRW committee meeting, and we're coming with a recommendation on that for the agenda item number 6. The other item discussed at the BFRW committee was an opinion request, and we discussed that at the committee, gave some feedback for the requester on that to maybe clarify the question they are asking, and we intend to bring that opinion back to the BFRW here in the next month, so in the July BFRW committee meeting, and should have some updated questions for that opinion coming out. And so that's what we did at the 2 committee meetings that transpired since our last council meeting.
Okay, to my memory, that covers everything. Any questions from the council or public comment? Okay. Not seeing any. Thank you, Dustin. We will close item 5 and move straight into our item 6 petition.
All righty. So the petition I spoke of at the BFRW committee, the recommendation that the BFRW moved forward to the council is to deny the petition as it's not considered an emergent need, and the council is not responsible for the enforcement of the code provisions. The local jurisdictions are. So the recommendation is to deny based on the not finding of emergency, that petition, but then to also respond to the request by issuing an opinion that we have drafted and posted for this meeting here today. The petition is due, the response is due here on the 28th. So at the end of this meeting here today, that letter will get drafted if we decide to deny it, and go out to the petitioner here today to meet the statutory deadline to respond. If we decided to file for emergency and begin rulemaking, the language that was before the BFRW committee was not deemed ready for filing an emergency rule. So we would need to massage that a bit more if we decide to file an emergency rule on this petition.
Okay, so just to maybe state, especially for new council members, so the first step in this is we've gone through the technical review of this in committee. The first action for the council is whether or not to establish an emergency basis, and maybe we need to pull that up just so we are all clear on that action and the number of votes needed to establish emergency basis. If emergency basis is not established, I think I'm using the correct terms, then that effectively denies the petition. If emergency basis is established, then we can go into deliberation and review of whether or not an amendment is appropriate as presented. So sorry if I caught you off guard there, Dustin.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions on that, just for review? There you go.
So this is 1927.032. And this is subsection 1, C1, B, C2 and 3 of that section. This statute outlines when the council can make changes to the building code. It outlines our 3-year cycle and prescribes when we can make off-cycle amendments. And so if it's not directed by the legislature, the only path for us to move forward with rulemaking is the emergency rulemaking pathway.
Okay, council, does everyone understand that? Is there any other public comment before we would entertain a motion on the emergency basis question? Does anyone want more review? I'm trying not to rush us through. We can get into more of the merits of the petition if needed. Pretty quiet group today. Is everyone aware of anyone not familiar with this? I just want to make sure that I'm not rushing through this. Should we at least show the petition, Dustin, to make sure? Go ahead, Tom.
So I'm actually kind of waiting for the appropriate time to make a comment, or do I wait for a motion, or do I make my comments now?
Now is a perfect time. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, so first of all, I found it a little bit odd that the gas piping for food trucks would be a building council issue, but I guess because it's part of the IFC, which is part of building code, and that's why it's come forward to us. And I've gone through the materials. I've also saw the number of service providers, and I disagree that there's sufficient. There's actually a very small number of service providers for such a large area in Washington State. And I have some compassion for these small business owners. Restaurants are small businesses. Food trucks are even smaller businesses. And, any additional expense or a loss of a day's income, it's not an inconvenience or a nuisance. They experience a sense of desperation because their finances are so critical to them. And they have this feeling of desperation when they're also trying to raise a family. And, our council members, I don't know when's the last time you felt this desperation about your finances. Maybe college or your first job, but they kind of experience this ongoing in trying to raise a family. And so I disagree that it should be a 3-year kind of extension, but maybe give them 1 year and a scolding and to say, get your act together because you won't get this again. So I would favor modifying it to 1 year extension rather than outright denial. And I, Micah and Angela made some very compelling arguments that perhaps this isn't really a matter for the council to take up, but it should be handed back down to the local AHJs. That was a convincing argument, but nonetheless, I still have this compassion for these very small businesses.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tom. I mean, so we're speaking right to the merit of the petition. And, the recommendation from BRFW is that we would not establish the emergency basis here as a council, but the preferred pathway would be move into the opinion that comes next. So, Angela, why don't you go ahead, please?
Yeah. So I want to reiterate something that Micah had brought up at the last meeting. I think that the giving them the exception to waive it for whether it's a month, 2 months, a year, 5 years, whatever, isn't appropriate. It directly contradicts section 104.1 of the codes, where it specifically states that the building or fire officials' policies and procedures shall not have the effect of waiving requirements specifically provided for in this code. So basically, the code says that you cannot waive this, even if it's saying we're going to push it off for a year or whatever. This has been in the code since the 2018 code went into effect. Fire departments, districts, whatever, around the state have been enforcing this. Not consistently, but there has been enforcement across the state from what I believe Dan has said. And so the fact that all of a sudden it got added to the checklist, and so now it's just more obvious, this should have been something that the food truck group or whatever was aware of for the last, 7, 8 years. They should have been preparing for this. And I do feel for these small businesses. I do. And I understand that this is a problem and things, but the ones that are following the rules are doing it. And then the others that were surprised, I'm really sorry about that. I am. And I don't want to put anybody out of business. I don't want any families starving or anything. But I think that instead of doing the emergency rule, going to the opinion that came forward that basically clarifies that the fire officials have the ability to make a judgment call on how to enforce it. And so if fire officials decide that having the food truck operator do the bubble test and they just witness it, and that's okay, that's acceptable to them, then that fits into the code. That's not waiving the requirement. That's not doing anything like that. That's just creating a different path than, say, having to go into an RV dealer or something else. So again, whichever way the motion goes, I will be voting against this, or to deny this petition, to actually waive the requirements, and instead would vote in favor of the opinion to allow the fire official to make the judgment call on how they want to enforce it. So that would be where I will stand on either of the motions. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Angela. And so that I think that sets us up well. So again, the petition's in front of us now, just so everyone is we flash it on the screen. The first action here is whether or not to establish the emergency basis. The recommendation from the BRFW is to not establish the emergency basis. So I think I'm going to ask once for any public comment on that action, and then ask for a council member to make a motion either for or against establishing a emergency basis. Go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, I had trouble tracking down materials, so I may have missed this, but can somebody explain or put on the screen the proposed opinion that's going to go out in lieu of an emergency motion, because I wasn't able to review that before today.
Sure. So you see that in front of you now. And I mean, it's perfectly acceptable to go more into the merits of this also, if that informs your vote on emergency basis.
Okay, so that's basically the substance of, okay, thank you.
Todd, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I think it's important. A lot of conversation was around the word approved, right? What's an approved entity or inspector, right? And where we left it was it essentially it being up to the local fire marshal. So I think the assumption is that it's some outside third-party agency, right? Whereas it could be the fire marshal themselves. It could be done through the food truck operator and signing an affidavit that they've done whatever the solution is or whatever the approved entity is or method.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Scott. That's my memory too, that it really reinforces obviously the fire official.
Yeah.
With that, Ken, please go ahead.
Ken Burlett, representing the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office.
Ken, you're very quiet today.
I'm very quiet today. That's not good. But you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Ken Burlett, Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. We have been attending all of these meetings and just want to reiterate that we do not agree that this is a emergency. So we're hoping that the council does look forward and not have this as an emergency.
Okay, I think we got that. Okay, I don't see any other public comment. Can we entertain a motion, please?
This is Jason Benway. I'd make a motion to deny.
Jason, just to clarify, the first action is whether or not to establish an emergency basis. So you can make a motion to not establish an emergency basis, and we can vote in the affirmative on that.
Okay, and I'll amend my motion, make a motion to not establish an emergency rule.
Thank you. Second by Angela. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to not establish an emergency basis. Any other deliberation by the council? Okay, let's try a voice vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Do we need to go on a roll call or just acknowledge that Tom is the single opposed vote?
You can acknowledge the single opposition vote.
Okay, so it's Tom Young for the record. Thank you. Okay, with that, then emergency basis has not been established, and the petition then effectively is denied. With that, then we can move. Do we have it as a separate agenda item to move into the opinion?
No, it's part of the same thing. So the recommendation from the BFRW was to not find emergency and to issue the opinion. So just a separate motion on the opinion would be what we need to make that final.
Okay. Does anyone need more discussion on this opinion? I see Patrick Hanks with public comment. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, VIW doesn't have a position on this, but having some experience with emergency petitions, if I were a council member, I might ask Dirk if you need to take an action, whether to approve or disapprove the petition, just since that's part of the APA process. It might be helpful to clearly deny it and then take an alternative step.
Can we just do that?
We've discussed this in the past, Patrick. I don't know if Derek is willing to weigh in. I had asked that question in a previous meeting. I don't see Derek.
He's online, but he's not unmuting. So, Derek, if you're there, do you have an opinion for us on whether or not the council needs to affirmatively deny the petition for APA purposes?
I think we cut him off. Okay. Thank you for raising that, Patrick. I had asked this question, but go ahead, Jay.
Just given that one, we're under a deadline to formally respond, and two, that there's no harm in having a second motion, and in the absence of a comment from the attorney, I'd like to make a motion to deny the petition.
Yep, that's easy. Thank
Second.
you. Roger, was that you?
Sure.
Okay. So moved to second by Jay and Roger to deny the petition. Any other deliberation or comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed?
Nay.
Yep. Thank you, Tom Young, for the single nay vote for the record. Okay, with that, then the council has signaled denial of the petition. Now let's move into the opinion. Thank you, Patrick, for raising that. Okay, Ben.
Thanks, Todd. I guess for the opinion statement, I'm wondering if it would be helpful, as like Angela brought up and Mike had brought up, to refer back to section 104.1 of the fire code to reference that provision of authority for the local jurisdiction to apply their process. And I guess the other thought I had is I'm not sure why in the response it's referencing the inspection checklist. Is that that would just be I guess, is that a statewide provision or something that would be jurisdictionally applicable? Yes, and how we want to use that as a statement from the council.
Thanks, Ben. Tom. Andy.
Yeah, to me, reading it just as is, and it kind of, tags along with what Ben was saying, it's confusing to me. The answer is confusing. If we just say that the local jurisdiction can determine the method that's acceptable, or the local fire marshal can, it would just be a lot more clear. Because I don't know, I think if we put in the food truck and inspection checklist, it just it muddies it up a bit to me. Just if I was reading it as a layman.
Okay. Any other opinions on that? Of course, the role of an opinion is to be the most helpful. So whatever is most helpful, and make sure that we document, the discussion and public meetings on this.
Angela or Mike, could you potentially maybe give me the section 104 dot number again? I could slot that in here for people to see.
104.1.
Tom, is that what you had intended?
Pretty much, but I think it still needs a little more clarification, to state what that 1041 says. And, in an inspection agency kind of makes it difficult because I don't know if we want to say agency, but the inspection process must be approved by the local fire marshal or something like that, that just cuts right down to the core of it.
Okay. Angela, can you help us?
Am I muted? Yeah, okay. First off, so that sentence now doesn't make sense because 104.1 is simply where it states that the fire official can't waive the requirements. They can interpret, they can create policies and procedures for how to enforce it, but they can't just waive a requirement because they don't like it or it's hard or whatever. That's kind of where that is. And I was just pulling up the fire code section so I can see what that says as far as required agency. Okay, so it says an approved inspection agency.
If agency was changed to process, would that still cover it?
The code section 319.10.3 actually does say by an approved inspection agency or a company that is registered, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's using the actual code language, which, again, approved means that the fire official says it's okay.
I think my point is back to, in parallel with Tom's, if somebody can't find anybody that'll do it, an agency that'll do it, then they're just plain out of business. But if the fire marshal himself or his designee can approve a different process to get to the same point, then they can perhaps go forward. I mean, I would hate to, in Pullman, have to drive to the Tri-Cities to have my truck inspected. It might not be that roadworthy to begin with.
Okay. Well, and just to reinforce this is an opinion, so it's not binding. I think it's reinforcing that it's on the fire official to determine.
Yeah, and if we could just somehow make that more clear to everybody, then that would make me feel more comfortable.
Okay, I see Roger.
Yeah, excuse me. I seem to remember from this discussion at the BFRW committee meeting, the idea that we even needed to create or issue an opinion we didn't feel was required. There were a number of comments that the current code allows what we are trying to clarify in this opinion. The reason that we decided, yes, let's go ahead and offer an opinion is because the question has come up and I agree with Tom. I have always kind of wanted to do whatever we can to help clarify this for food truck users. Understand there's a confusion. I didn't support the emergency rule because I didn't think it met the emergency rule, but what could we do to help those folks that are trying to meet this? So another path would be, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, the council, number one, I think that the council has met our requirement to deal with the petition. The adoption of this opinion is basically an add-on, something that we are trying to do. We could, because where we sit today, the fire official is the determining factor. I think that's written, that is code language. We could ask the BFRW to refine this answer and issue it as an opinion. So just wanted to throw that out there. I believe, and I am not an expert on the fire code, but from the conversations that I had, or we had as a BFRW committee, the code basically says what we're trying to say now. We're just trying to clarify it. So just a thought.
Okay. Angela, go ahead.
I'd like to hear from Dan or Ken on their thoughts of changing the word from approved agency, which is the code, to entity, whether they have a yay or nay on that, since they are the actual fire code officials that I believe are on this meeting.
And I lost.
So Ken has his hand up. I'll let him go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So how's the microphone now?
Hey, a lot better.
Sorry, I was connected to the headset, which is hanging up before. All right, so I brought this up before. The 2024 IFC, which of course we're moving towards here in a few months. It says approved, annually by an approved inspection agency, comma, person or special expert who is qualified to ensure the system components, blah, blah, blah. So I think that, in your opinion, if you brought forward the 24 language and included person, that again gives the fire code official the ability to not just think that it's an inspection agency, it could be an individual person, which they have deemed is, in their opinion, acceptable. So I think we should put the word person in there. That's my feeling. Thanks.
So approved entity or person, is that the language?
No, it's approved annually by an approved inspection agency, just like it shows right now, a comma, person, comma, or no, person or special expert, who is qualified to ensure the system components are free from damage, suitable for the intended service, and not subject to leaking. I would just be looking at the 24 language, which is more broadly allows others than somebody that is registered with U.S. Department of Transportation to requalify gas cylinders. I think it eases up the requirements using the 24 language.
Okay, so just to be careful here, we're referencing the 2021 code here. So if that's not what section 319.10.3 says in the 2021 code, let's word it carefully to acknowledge that we're moving to the 2024 language. Thank you, Ken. Go ahead, Dan.
So I like this here with person also, but when you use entity could be, and I just looked it up real quick, it is something that exists as a discrete, independent, or distinct unit. It can be a physical object, a living being, so it does say a living being, which would be a person. So I know it's semantics, but I'm okay either way.
Okay.
And I would look at it as a fire code official. An agency can be a person, in my opinion.
Okay.
That because it would be, it's not like it's still a person doing the inspection, and doing the testing. So
person is also defined in the fire code. So
it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Ken is a lot better with the nuances than I am on this. So
Okay, in both of your opinions, do we want to wordsmith this here, or do we think we have the general intent of the council and we can move this back to BRFW? I don't want to belabor it too much here, but also don't want to delay it if we can resolve it here. And for everyone, the BRFW, the committees, standing committees are also able to move opinions forward if we, especially since we've documented the intent of the council here.
So just a point of clarification, that does not have, if we go back to the BFRW committee, does it have to come back to the full council?
No, the committee can take action if it's simply a matter of we need to wordsmith this offline and just bring it back and have the BRFW move forward. That's an option. Or if we're comfortable, the council can move this forward or not. Ken, is your hand still up to make a comment?
Yeah, I guess my comment is if Dan's the Contest County Fire Marshal, do you really still need this opinion?
I personally don't. It was kind of brought up as to help clarify. You know, and it's one of those things, you know, that's why the State Fire Marshals Association came up with the checklist. We're trying to get consistency across the board, and if this helps with the consistency, I'm all for it.
Good question, though. Okay, let's go with Jay.
Thank you. When I think about the other opinions that we have done, they're really clarifications. And so I think that it's valuable to take some action today to clarify.
Yep.
As we've discussed this particular issue, it's really not a problem with the standards. It's a challenge that some jurisdictions may be having with having the way to verify compliance, and I think this gives to it and gives the authority having jurisdiction clarity that they have some flexibility on how this gets inspected. So I'm comfortable with moving forward today.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. And I agree. Opinions can be revised too if there's new knowledge. So go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like providing the opinion because I think where some of the confusion has come up is the actual wording from the checklist, where it seems to infer that it has to be an agency with those specific credentials and things. So I don't think this, I think this can be helpful to provide a little bit of leeway for some fire officials that may not feel as comfortable with making interpretations like that. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Thanks, Angela. Go ahead, Tom.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt this opinion and move it forward.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I believe that was Scott was the second. So Tom, Handy, and then Scott.
I'm just jumping in. Did you hear my stuttering there?
Go ahead, please.
I just want to make sure, is the motion with regard to the opinion as amended? Is that the proposal here?
That's my understanding, but go ahead.
Yeah, as stated as it reads on the screen.
Okay. Scott, that's your intent also, second?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, it's being edited as you speak. We needed a capital S just to start the sentence. So I think that
I was going to raise it, but thank you. Yep.
That's right.
Okay, go ahead, Angela.
So are we not sending it to the BFRW for work?
No, I think we're proposing to do it right here.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I was just clarifying where we were at.
Yep. Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Well, you can't add person in here and refer to the 2021 code like you're quoting it, that section, because it doesn't have person in the 21 edition, only has it in the 24 edition. So my recommendation is not to approve it by the committee and waste more of the committee's time. Send it back down if you want it wordsmith it. But You can't start putting in language that doesn't exist in the 21 code.
Yeah, that was my concern. Okay. Council, how do you feel about that? Or is there a way to resolve that? Go ahead, Jay.
I would recommend that we issue an interpretation for the 24 code today and kick that back down the 21 code to the BFRW to wordsmith.
And do you have that number that this is in the 24 code handy by chance?
4106.4.3.1, and it's titled LP-gas systems.
So Jay, if I heard you correctly there, you're advising that we don't take action on this day and move it to BFRW. Yeah.
I would move to amend the motion to issue the opinion today solely on the 2024 IFC, fire code.
Okay. Is that a friendly amendment? Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Well, I do have a question. If we just didn't refer to the code, but it's understood already that it can be a person by the fire officials, then we could just say, start the sentence by the inspection agency must be it's moving around so fast I can't keep my the inspection agency must be an approved inspection or I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. So I'm going to jump in real quick here.
Yeah.
And I agree, Tom. It's tough to wordsmith stuff in an open meeting like this. But I guess I want to make sure I'm tracking something, and I don't know if this is going to be helpful, Todd. So please indulge me. But I actually have a question for Ken. Ken, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. Do you think that the changes to the language in the 2024 code are a substantive change to 2021, or is it kind of more of just of a clarification?
No, I think it is substantive.
Well, if that's true, and if the council members agree, then I don't know if there's a way that we could wordsmith this, because we're operating under the 2021 code here, and an opinion probably shouldn't make a substantive change to existing code.
Yeah, our code that we haven't approved yet, adopted yet. Go ahead, Roger.
I always like to have an opposite opinion of Dirk.
I welcome it.
What we're trying to say, and I know this is wordsmithing, but the question really is, how do we approve? Who can approve this? We're operating under the 21 code. Is it not fair, legal, correct for us as a council to say, in the 2024 code, this is the language, that it is an approved inspection agency person or special expert. And we believe as an opinion that that definition should be applied to the 2021 code.
No, I mean, I think that's exactly the right question to ask. And that's kind of what animated me to ask Ken that question, right? So that I asked him.
If the code section is the 2021, so not the 24, but we're addressing the 2021.
By interpreting the 21 code.
Get the right section.
Right.
And I think we need to leave in the answer, yes, section 104.1 states that the fire official cannot waive the provision.
That's right.
And then say section 401.6.4.3.1 of the 2024 code currently states that the inspection agency being approved, and whatever the rest of that sentence says. It is our opinion that this expansion or clarification of the definition should be applied to the 2021 code.
I think there's a way to reach that. I guess my caution would be on the record right now. We have Ken, whose opinion carries some weight, has a different point of view on that.
With that, go ahead, Ken, and then I'll.
Thanks. So I think if you look at the question, all right, can the fire code official allow LP gas systems installed on mobile food preparation vehicles to be inspected using locally approved methods? The answer is yes, because 104.9 modifications allows them to do that. That's the answer, is yes, that they can come up with whichever method they want to for modifications, or you can quote 104.10. That's the answer to the question, is yes, that they can use another method. They can, and they're able to approve something differently. I think that and that would cover this code, and it would cover future codes.
I'll amend my motion to that.
So if you could pull up 104.9 modifications, because that also kind of encompasses 104.1's philosophy that it does not lessen health, life, and safety. So 104.9 modifications.
Okay. So back to then the opinion. Ken, can you help us simplify this then?
Well, the answer would be yes. Per 104.9 modifications, the fire code official has the ability, or is authorized to allow locally approved methods. I mean, just something to that effect. I mean, or you can just say yes per 104.9 modifications, and then let the user go read that section if they need to, or requote the whole thing.
Okay. Is what's in front of us acceptable? It's very straightforward. Okay, if so, Tom, is that acceptable to amend your motion?
Works for me.
Scott, second?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. Any other deliberation by the council? Okay, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that opinion passes. Thank you all for getting this one done.
Just real quick, Todd.
Yep.
Local officials can approve of other methods. Is that right? Or should be can approve other methods? There we go.
Okay, is that editorial, or do we need to?
Yeah, in my view, that's an editorial change, and there's not a need.
Maybe should be an yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you, Derek, for your opinion. Okay, Ken, you still have your hand up. Did we miss something? Okay.
No, that's just me stepping away, congratulating myself.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. Next item, we're going to move into our cost benefit analyses. So item 7, please.
So we've been working real hard on these to get them ready for the meetings and get them out there for the public comment period. We had some late information coming in from Warren McLeod on these, and we got them buttoned up. We heard earlier from Greg Johnson that we got some additional information from PNNL that we'll take as public comment to further update the energy code document there. But I'll turn this over to Krista to lead us through, and then we also have a representative from Warren McLeod who's been assisting in the cost benefit analysis online to answer some questions here today. And so with that, I'll turn over to Krista, and she's taken over the screen share.
The commercial cost benefit analysis is done in a slightly different format than the other ones. You'll notice the majority of the proposals are located actually in Appendix B, where it says these are all the ones with no economic impact, and they're kind of done in abbreviated format and just as a table, which gives you a basic description of the proposal and all the actions taken, and a short description of the economic impact. And there are 67 of these, so we won't go through them all individually. Then they're broken up into the chunks that went to Warren McLeod for analysis, which are the ones that had the most cost impact. And I'm sorry, they didn't get marked in the index of which ones had cost and which ones didn't. And I'll get that fixed before it goes to publication. And then there's the additional 25 that had either cost savings or neutral that are in the main body there. And then Warren McLeod broke their proposals into groupings. So you've got the 5 groups there for envelope, mechanical, lighting, whole building, and existing buildings, basically. And you've seen part of their reports under the residential previously. So they look slightly different again. There's the description, the analysis, small business findings, and just the description for each of those. I think there were 34, 36 proposals that they did. So that's just a broad overview of what's contained in this one.
Yeah, thank you, Krista. It's substantial, and it's really exciting to see this. As a reminder to everyone, so what we're doing here, to my understanding, is these get submitted in the CR 102 filing, correct? As preliminary, and that is scheduled for July 1st, to my memory.
Yeah, we're filing. That's our filing deadlines, and when we file on or before that date, the filing will be published in the July 22nd Washington State Register, and that begins our public comment period as far as the minimum APA, but we will be accepting comments starting July 1, and that window will close on August 7th.
Okay, so this is the first chance we've had to post these to a public meeting and then obviously bring them into the filing. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, Dustin, can you, for everybody, can you outline the remaining steps? So public comment is held through, what did you just say, August
7th. So we'll have 2 hearings for public. So we take written comment up and signups for oral testimony up until the hearings, which are going to be scheduled for August 5th and August 7th. The August 5th hearing will be in Olympia, and the August 7th hearing will be in Spokane at Spokane City Hall. And once we close the comment period, the council then needs to respond to the comments received. So staff will then create transcript of the hearings, organize all the comments into a way that the council can then respond to them in a structured manner. Once the council responds to that and we can develop any modifications to the code, the council then needs to do a final adoption of the proposed, or I guess no longer proposed, but the final code language to go into CR 103. And once we file CR 103, the adoption process is done. But we'll be filing CR 103 here in this year, but we'll be delaying the implementation out until May 3rd of 2027, which is the first business day after the legislative session.
And we have to approve CR 103 prior to December 15th, correct, for the energy codes?
Correct. It's easier to just say that we need the deadline to be December 1. Energy codes has a December 1 deadline. The other one has the December 15. So we have traditionally tried to hit December 1 as that deadline date.
So the purpose of us reviewing this is to understand if we feel like it is complete and should be included in the CR 102. If we have a opinion that we don't agree with something, that would apply, that opinion should be expressed after it gets approved. We're not necessarily approving the numbers that we think that these are right or don't have necessarily any problems with any of the individual. We're just saying this is complete. This is ready for us to publish and put out for public comment.
That is correct. We're not saying that the numbers are exactly what they are. So this is going to start the process for the public to comment on these. And if we need to change numbers as a result of public comment, that will be updated in the final cost benefit analysis, which happens as part of the deliberation of the council on the final amendments. And we have Maura McLeod standing by also to help us flex anything that's in our report after the code language goes through its final modifications towards CR 103.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, we're looking, we have both of them. We have two agenda items. So maybe should we also look at the other one, or we want to deal with that after? I see a public comment from Greg. Why don't you go ahead, Greg?
Yeah, I want to first off and say big kudos to you, Dustin. Thank you so much. I mean, this is so much better. I don't think we've ever had a report like this prior to the CR 102. And so thank you for trying to fulfill the statutory requirements. So big thank you on that. And then also, I recognize this is labeled as a preliminary CBA and SBEIS, which not the final one. So there's no claims that this is air free, no claims that this is supposed to be final numbers, kind of to Roger's point. So I kind of was wanting to inquire what would be the review and revision process. I really liked Todd, when you facilitated the work group on economic impact. I thought that was really valuable into modifying, and wondering if there's a possibility to actually host that, not prior to CR 102, but maybe during the public comment period or maybe after it. And my concern would be usually after CR 102 public comment period, there isn't really any opportunity for public discussion and collaboration on stuff, which I see is needed for the final one. And wondering if there'd be an opportunity for that work group and public collaboration to get this right for the final. Especially since in my precursory review, I did find some errors and also some areas where there's gaps that we could help substantiate better. And I was wondering if there's opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about that too, Greg. I think it's a really good comment because, for the other building codes, we've closed the public record now, and we're going to move into, work groups are of just the council. There'll be public meetings, of course, but I think that's a good suggestion. So maybe we should think about that and maybe find I think that is the right vehicle to is to pull the work group of economic impact together. Okay, so thank you for that. Let's note that and try to see if we can schedule that. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, for me and maybe some other new council members, can you explain the process and the venue for the notice for public comments?
So, yes, the vehicle for public notice is the CR 102 filing. That is, serves as the official public notice. When that gets filed in the register, it has the locations and times specific, spelled out in the notice that's filed there. As we make filings, we are trying to make sure we get other public notice through the SBCC notice on our website. I guess not publishing on our website, but we have the Gov Delivery Service, which is going to be changing names here soon to Granicus Content. But that's not relevant for the discussion here today. We use that to put out notice to folks who might not know to go look at the state register. And we also will be publishing on the website we have the meetings that go out on our meeting calendar as part of that notice. And so, but the official vehicle and notice happens when we do the filing. You know, if I have a follow-up question, please feel free. I don't know if I hit it all.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Go ahead, Tom. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so it doesn't like automatically go through like the typical kind of like news publications or like, you know, there's a section for like notices and like in classified ads.
Can I jump in real quick on this? So Tom, there are notice requirements like that for other types of legal proceedings. This is governed by our Administrative Procedure Act, which specifically directs agencies on how to provide notice. So imagine the state register is like one big like statewide newspaper that tells the public what's going on with respect to administrative rulemaking across the state. So formally, that's the way that the APA directs agencies to provide that legal notice. That said, though, there's lots of other avenues that are used by agencies, including SBCC, to provide sort of more informal notice to make sure that people are aware of their opportunity to comment. And I should note too, just for everybody to be clear, public comment isn't just showing up at the hearing. That's really important, but it's an opportunity to provide written comment, which is really essential for SBCC staff and SBCC members to understand, kind of do a deep dive into the public's thoughts on these rules.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Lisa, sorry, I missed you. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. Is there a particular procedure or structure to the actual public comments themselves? We get questions from folks through technical support on how they can participate in the process, and I wasn't sure if there was some particular guidelines on how those comments need to be structured when they are submitted. And I'm referring particularly to written comments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Go ahead, Dustin, and respond, please.
So if I get this question, I've been asking folks that if they have comments that are touching on multiple proposals, that we try to get those as separate comments. But in the event that we do get comments that are touching on multiple proposals, staff has been breaking those into individual comments so that we can address each proposal and try to make sure that we're not addressing one comment and it touches multiple sections of the code. So that's my main ask, is to try to make it granular. And if you have comments on multiple sections or multiple proposals that are going into the CR 102, that we try to get those itemized out for us to be able to better handle them and for the council to respond to them in a better structured manner.
Can I say something, Todd, on that too?
Of course, yeah.
Because Lisa asked a really good question about whether there's a legal requirement or a form that's used for public comments, and the short answer is no. You heard Dustin indicate, hey, it'd be really helpful, right, if the comments were very specific about rules. But the public agencies, including SBCC, accept comments that look like anything. Email, a quick email, a long letter with lots of legal citations. Obviously, the more specific and more substantive the comment is, the more helpful it is to the council. But members of the public shouldn't feel precluded from offering their opinions on things because they think that it needs to be done in a certain way.
Yeah. Did that help, Lisa? Is there a follow-up?
Oh yeah, it looks like I'm still unmuted. Yeah, that's really helpful. So my takeaway is that comments, you'd prefer the comments to actually reference particular proposals, if that is relevant to it, and if it touches on multiple proposals, then Dustin, you'd like them to the comments to be organized in a way that it's clear which particular proposals, and not more broad brush, or are broad brush comments okay too?
They're okay. We'll take them. It just as we start trying to respond to a thing, if we got general comments, like general support comments, we have several of those, but they're not requesting modifications or changes. General opposition comments typically will say, please don't adopt the provisions contained in this proposal. But when we start having specific suggestions for modifications, it really helps if it's itemized out. But you could give us one letter of comment that has multiples, as long as it's kind of structured so that we can divide that out and respond to them. It's really helpful for us to have that structure in the comments.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's go with Katie first and then Patrick.
Well, I was just going to add it. It's in basically any form, especially the what I remember last time. I do remember our chair limiting the comments, the in-person comments to like 1 minute one time. Another time it was 3 minutes because there wasn't as many people.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of know that probably will be a time limit. And also, I mean, we had one that came in as a song, which was fun.
It was fun.
Anyway.
Katie's breaking up for me. Are other people having that problem?
Yeah.
Katie, you're a little bit spotty.
I think we got most of it though, Katie, but you are breaking up. We got the song part.
Yeah, and actually that compels me to feel like I need to say something else, mostly just to demonstrate that I pay attention. Lisa, when we were talking before, it was about written submissions.
Got it.
But what Katie's referring to is really important, and that is the hearings themselves. So there are multiple hearings across the state, and people can participate remotely. But depending on volume, sometimes you need to set put controls in place in order to manage how long people can speak. And so that's something that you might see happen if we have a lot of people show up for a hearing. Might need to impose some time limits on their comments.
And just for everyone's reference, in the building code hearings, we left the window open long enough that 3 minutes was appropriate. We didn't have to shorten anything. So, okay. Sorry, Katie, we lost you there. Patrick, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. First, I have some comments and thoughts, but first I have a question as I'm trying to read through this. Sometimes it's showing, dollar savings. Sometimes it's showing cost increase, and sometimes these are in a positive or negative value, but it can be a little bit confusing to determine what that actually translates to in project cost. So I guess my question would be, is if it's saying, or if there's a key to understand, that would be great. But if not, if it's saying savings, a positive value would be a cost decrease. But if it's savings showing a negative value, that would be a cost increase. And the reverse would be true if the line item is a cost increase.
Okay.
I know that's probably complicated.
No, it's a good comment, and I'm just thinking, today our goal is obviously to get these, posted, and then whether or not we have to take action, I think we're intending the council to say we acknowledge receipt of these, thank you, and please include these in the CR 102, and then back to Greg's comment, like what is the best forum for us to kind of get a little bit more into the technical merits, make sure we understand it, so we get most helpful public feedback. And so maybe that is, let's schedule a session to work for the work group of economic impact, unless anyone's opposed to that, or if I'm somehow crossing wires by doing that during the public comment period. I don't think we are. Go ahead, Dustin.
I don't think there's any issue with scheduling a work group of economic impact meeting during the comment period. But as we were discussing this, I was of the mind that a response, like as we get the comments in and we start responding to them, we might receive some comments to say this number in this report is wrong, or you need some, better justification. And my thought would be, as we start to go through the work sessions for the council, that we would schedule a work group economic impact meeting, maybe not after all those conclude, but like as needed, once we identify some spots that need some attention via the public comment. But I think during the open window, it might we might not get as much traction as we could possibly get if we did it a little bit after the window's closed.
I think that's a valid point. I sense people want to talk about it though, and I'm just a little nervous about opening up too much public comment after we close the record. But I think it's a valid approach too.
Yeah, Todd, and I just want to caution everybody that and I think we all know this, of course, that the reason we put out the preliminary cost benefit analysis is for purposes of getting reactions to it. And so that's the process that's anticipated under our state laws, that if there are concerns like along the lines or questions along the lines of what Patrick was just offering, those can surface during the comment period. And that doesn't leave us a lot of time at the end to address it, right? Which I understand your point, Todd. And so during the comment period, it certainly would make sense to engage with folks to see, maybe some of the questions that are coming up. But the council would want to make sure that it's reacting to public comments regarding the cost benefit analysis that they received during the cost benefit analysis, during the comment period. So in short, I think you would be better advised to not be making any proposed substantive changes to the cost benefit analysis during the public comment window, because you need to receive all the public comments before you sort of dive into that. All right. Have I talked too much, Todd?
No, that's perfect. I'm just thinking how we'll do this.
I saw a look of pain and pathos on your face.
I'm thinking of that meeting after we close the public record. Yes,
I know. I'm with you. Totally.
Okay. All right, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure this out. So thank you for all the comments. Lisa, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. If I may, since Morant McLeod is available, I think that's what I heard. I do have a question for them, and this is going to be beneficial for anybody who's reviewing this report and formulating their public comments. Do the cost impacts include integrative effects of multiple interrelated proposals, or are they all analyzed as standalone measures?
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ernest Stevens. I'm happy to answer that question.
Welcome, Ernest. Please go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you. So some of them do relate to one another. So the answer to that question is yes. One that comes to mind specifically, I'm trying to remember the large number of them off the top of my head, but I believe it's on the residential side. Proposals 37 and 38 relate to one another. So this came up often. So generally speaking, they do, and where they did, we try to we tried to point that out in our narratives.
That's great. Thank you very much for that information.
Absolutely.
Ernest, is there anything else while you're have the mic here that you'd like to thank you for all the work on this? Is there anything else you'd like to acknowledge or point to us?
Oh, well, I mean, absolutely. First off, this is the second meeting that I've watched, and I just want to comment that what I've seen from your council, that everybody is quite thoughtful, and I just wanted to call that out, and I appreciate that very much. There are a handful of us working on this all together, and there are a large number of proposals that we worked on, analyzed, that do not have a cost effects the way Krista mentioned earlier. We do show them here. We also found that there are some outcomes that were kind of difficult to place in the narrative the way we wanted to. So you're going to see where we say that some things are, or where some things are beneficial. And there's also this kind of middle space we tried to occupy where we said, hey, yeah, like you can adopt this because there is some economic benefit, but the LLCA is not cost effective, but there could be macro benefits that you might want to consider. So we tried to put those types of things in our narratives and do just kind of slice things in a way that's easy for people to absorb. Generally speaking, that's how we try to approach it for you.
Great. Well, that's helpful. Thank you for some commentary on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, I see Greg, your hand's up.
Yeah, I wanted to offer up a suggestion that might, for consideration, would be, what if you had two sets of meetings for the work group? What if you held one during the public comment period at like the last week in July? That way you could maybe have already gotten several comments from the public and gives time for people to discuss. And then that would be an opening for a collaboration to actually go through it. And yet it still leave like one more week of public comments after the work group to go through. And then the council could have another economic work group meeting afterwards to kind of review what was already discussed. And the reason why for that suggestion is kind of to Todd's point, was not wanting to reopen the record after you've closed the record. I don't know, I'm not up on the rules, but I don't know how that would limit collaboration between the public on trying to get this right, versus so that way you could still have collaboration during the public comment period without risking any violations, but then also gives the council an opportunity to review all the any straggling comments at the very end with a second meeting, and then you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about opening the record.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a way to do it, and I appreciate those comments. I think we'll figure it out, and I agree. Maybe there's two meetings. Okay. Council, we are technically in agenda item 7 right now. We have only looked at the commercial cost benefit analysis on the screen here. So I guess we should move these separately and take the residential one next. Patrick has his hand up. Would you like to squeeze something in, please?
Yes. More of my general comments on the CBA. I have concerns that the costs are being underestimated and that multifamily is not modeled in some of the highest cost proposals. Generally, I saw they used office buildings, but for some of the highest cost ones, multifamily is going to face substantially higher costs than office buildings. Some proposals present no energy savings. And assuming that the council is going to move forward with publishing these, and because of the tight deadline you have to get them published and stay on schedule, I think the energy code will need substantial changes to respond to public comment. And I would recommend that you factor that in, and that you may need to delay implementation accordingly later this year. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, council, with that, the proposed action here today is to move these forward to CR 102 filing. First with the commercial code. So can we hear a motion to move the Washington Energy Code commercial preliminary cost benefit analysis to CR 102?
Todd, can I ask a question on the Patrick's comment about some are, sort of maybe misrepresenting the actual cost? Yes, probably is my opinion. However, if we move this forward to public comment, that's the opportunity for groups or individuals to comment specifically on items. I think the comment is broad, right? And it needs to be narrowed down to specific items where there may or may not be concerns, right? Like doing these analysis takes a lot of different, variables into account. And there's no way to get to perfection. But I think that, that being said, I think that's the opportunity, the public comment is where, anybody who wants to challenge a specific item, that's where they do it. I don't think that challenging the document, and 30, 40 items and saying they're all wrong, is really going to sway anybody's, on the council's opinion about it, because it's not really giving us real information, about what we need to look at and consider. We certainly don't want to make decisions that are detrimental to, I mean, I don't think we want to make, we're balancing environment and safety and welfare and all of these things that and then there's the commercial aspect of, helping projects pencil or making, not loading them up with requirements that make development, impossible. Or so, I mean, that's sort of the, when Patrick said that, I was like, okay, yeah, true. You could certainly challenge any one of these, right? Like you could blow holes in it, but I think it's the job of the public and us to do that if we with specific items, if we want to challenge those specific items, not just blow holes in the entire document and the methodology.
Yeah, correct. Today's meeting, it was our intention, the schedule is set, our intention to receive these today, acknowledge that receipt, post them, and then take action to move them into CR 102 for the filing. So we will not get to the merits of all the proposals or of the documents here today. It was not the intent. Go ahead, Representative Rammel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you prefer to move commercial separately, or do you want to do commercial and residential simultaneously?
I think just the commercial, since we list them as separate agenda items.
Okay. So. I move proceeding to CR 102 and including this in the filing for including this draft as to be corrected by staff in that filing.
Thank you.
Second, this is Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move the 2024 Washington State Energy Code Commercial Preliminary Cost Benefit Analysis into CR 102 filing. Any other deliberation? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you for that. Now let's move to agenda item 8, which is the Washington State Energy Code Residential Preliminary Cost Benefit Analysis. Again, our intent is not to go through the specific merits, but to acknowledge receipt, make sure everything is sufficient for preliminary filing. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, got an email that somebody's having some difficulty, maybe giving some comment here. I'm looking for Rusty Bell. If you could raise your hand on the Zoom, we could let you give some comment here. I think, Steve, is that you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Steve.
You can't hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm actually speaking as the executive director for the Northwest Concrete and Masonry Association. I apologize, I haven't been able to get in and get access until now. Just a couple of comments. Would you allow me to speak a little bit here?
Is it on the cost benefit analysis?
Yes, it's going to be on the cost benefit analysis
Okay.
for
Yeah, go ahead.
264.R. Just a couple things. It's pretty well acknowledged that increasing insulation values provide increasingly smaller incremental gains right now. That's what all the studies are showing. And we're showing that mass walls provide benefits well beyond just R factor relationships. And 3 new consensus standards, ACI 122.1, point 2, and point 3 recognize thermal mass impacts. These are new things. These are new things, not stuff that's come out of the past. So we would like some more time to review this. We really haven't had a big chance. And there's a few things that we stand out on the cost study analysis. One of them is unreasonably low incremental wall costs, erroneous steady state approach to predicting commercial energy use, and also incorrect assumptions of viable wall insulation options. So in summation, we're feeling like we need to get more information presented to make this a valid cost analysis. And the purpose of the Building Code Council is basically to weigh options, not just duplicate model codes, which has kind of been suggested as a solution. And so that's all I have.
Okay.
I appreciate that. I'll submit them in a written response, and I apologize. I should have gotten on before,
No.
but I'll be monitoring. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And again, this is just the first step. This is just submitting them to CR 102 so we can begin that public comment period. So thank you for that.
Sure, Todd. Thanks.
Yep. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, with that, then I would like to make a motion that we move the 2024 Washington State Energy Code Residential Provisions Preliminary Cost Benefit Analysis and Small Business Economic Report into the CR 102 process.
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
Thank you, Representative Rammel. Is there any other deliberation on that? Go ahead, Representative Rammel.
Thanks. Just wanted to touch base, make sure. I think on the previous one there was some indexing suggestions that staff wanted to make, kind of technical corrections. Anything that we need to be contemplating for this one, Dustin?
Nope. Not that I've been informed on.
And this is an updated one from the last meeting. It does now have all of the Morant McLeod information inserted, and it has been, the Morant McLeod report has been updated since the previous version as well.
And just make sure that those that are just joining us today, that we did review this one more in depth at the last meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Public comment. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, I will just echo my comments on the commercial side. They're somewhat similar for residential, although multifamily not necessarily applies the same way. But I'll expand in that in the past, historically, the council has tried to limit the substantial changes they make at final adoption to avoid additional rulemaking. I think generally these cost benefit analysis are good, and they will provide much greater opportunity for public comment that will require substantial changes, and that will require additional time after final adoption for that rulemaking. So I'm just pointing that out, that the council may be aware that there might be a need to do additional rulemaking for substantial changes and adjust timelines accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just so everyone, reminder that if there are substantial changes, we have allotted for that in the schedule. Okay, thank you for that. It's been moved and seconded to move the 2024 Washington State Energy Code residential preliminary cost benefit analysis to CR 102 filing. Let's try a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you for all of the work. These are substantial, and we all look forward to digging in more. Okay, I think we can close those two items. Now we're on to item 9, other business. Do we have other business for the council?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing none, as always, thank you for your expertise and your time. We are adjourned.
See ya.
Thank you, everybody.